Clashes on Capitol Hill tonight as division deepens thanks to the Democrats' attempts to impeach this president, something that could have major repercussions for our country, our political system, our economy, of course, and our relationships with other nations all around the world. At this moment, we are less than 24 hours from the first House-wide vote on impeachment. Joining me right now, Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Rubio, welcome.
Thanks.
So they're going to get the votes?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what their votes are over there. But look, here's the problem with all this. I think we have trivialized impeachment. It is a major remedy. I mean, it is an extraordinary remedy, and it is very traumatic for the country. It should only be imposed very cautiously. It should only be pursued cautiously. The decision should be made based on all the facts, and ultimately, the final decision should be made on the basis of what's in the best interest of America. So let's assume for a moment, I don't, but let's assume for a moment you're somebody or somebody who thinks that Donald Trump is terrible for America and they don't agree with him on anything. What is the right approach for our country? Is it to defeat him at the ballot box, or to put us through this very painful, traumatic experience, frankly, for something that has not been pursued in a way to this point that's been very transparent or provided facts? They're just leaking information every day as they see fit.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You've got 63 million votes that you're trying to undo, and that's a pretty serious thing, and you should be thinking very clearly, very thoughtfully about that and its ramifications on the future. What kind of precedent it sets, of course. I mean, I've made the comparison, and I'll make it before. It feels like we're increasingly a little like Latin America, right? Or one of these banana republics that kind of can't get their act together, as opposed to the United States of America, which has a peaceful transition of power.
Yeah, I mean, just you think about the precedent it set, that's a great point. What will happen, I am telling you, what will happen is in the future now, both parties, anytime there's somebody that gets elected, they don't like the outcome of the election, they don't like something they do, they immediately jump on it and they're going to pursue impeachment as a way to bring them down, as opposed to beating them at the ballot box. The trauma it would just paralyze this place. You wouldn't be able to get anything done. But here's the main point, and these people should think about it tomorrow before they vote. The American people did not send them here to spend their whole time on partisan investigations. They want people up here working on the things that matter to them, the people, not the things that matter to us politically, like these sort of gamesmanship that we've seen now. So at the end, I hope they'll take that into account. Yeah,
hopefully. I doubt it, but hopefully. John Bolton, let me ask you about him, because we've heard that he was not very happy with Rudy Giuliani or this president and what was going down in Ukraine, and he expressed those concerns to Fiona Hill, who then told Congress about that. Do you think that John Bolton will testify next week, because he's been subpoenaed?
Yeah, I have no idea. I know he'll comply with whatever the law requires him to do. But again, and I don't blame you for asking me the question, but just know we are all operating here on the basis of opening statements given by witnesses and questions and answers to questions as the Democrats have chosen to leak to the press. So we're not watching the back and forth. We're not seeing the full plethora of questions. We're not seeing all of the evidence put together in its entirety. That we're operating on the basis of what they've chosen to tell us, and I assure you that what they're leaking is things that are favorable to the theme and the narrative that they've already tried to establish. So I just don't think anyone's in a position to opine at this point until all the evidence is public and before us, so we can make wise choices about what's in the best interest of the country.
Will that happen if there's this formal impeachment inquiry vote? Will America get a chance to see what's really going down there?
No, I don't think this vote, from my understanding, all it does is basically formalize the way they've already been running this process. Now, eventually they will have to do something public. Eventually they will have to go to the floor and vote on articles of impeachment. And if they do that, eventually there'll have to be a trial in the Senate. But we're not at that stage right now. But part of this is, let's leak out information so we can impact public opinion on the matter, so that we can make more Democrats and maybe a couple Republicans feel safer or better about voting for impeachment. This is about creating the environment so more people feel safer voting for. Remember, a few weeks ago, there were a significant number of Democrats that didn't want this. This was all about creating the political environment to make them feel more comfortable doing it.
Let me turn to doing your job. You're working on trying to change how American pensions invest around the world, specifically with countries that aren't necessarily doing us any favors, China being one. Talk us through the legislation that you're proposing there.
Yeah, think about it. I'm going to start with a federal pension, okay? Think about it. Our members of the military, even members of Congress, our employees, they all contribute to this federal thrift savings plan that's heavily invested in China. Chinese companies that do not allow us to see their books or audit them the way we would any other company in the world. So number one, think about the risk that we're exposing them to. Number two, think about American federal employees' dollars, investment dollars, being used to capitalize companies that steal from us, that violate human rights, that work against our national interest. And number three, think about the leverage that it gives China in the future. When you've got millions of American government workers whose retirement funds could be wiped out if they decide to wipe them out, because again, they don't operate under the same rules that all the other companies that we're investing in that thrift fund operate under. I think it's crazy. I think it's ridiculous.
I think you're making a really good point. From many different levels, we should be thinking hard about just exactly what investment we're putting into China. Let me turn to our trade deal with China, which was supposed to possibly be signed in Chile, but APEC rather, Chile, looks like that may not be in the cards, given the protests there, and Piñera is having a real challenge trying to keep a lid on things. Chile was like the one country, Senator, that seemed to be okay, and now Chile is a problem too. What's going to happen with APEC?
Well, Chile's got some, a lot of this actually is the result of some decisions that were made that raised the cost of living on people. It's actually a very prosperous country. I would tell you that there's reason to suspect, however, that left-wing elements from Cuba and Venezuela are involved in stoking these protests, not just in Chile, but also in Ecuador, involved in events in Argentina and the recent election that appears to have been stolen in Bolivia. But I would say this about the trade deal. It doesn't matter where they sign it. It really is like a preliminary deal to sort of keep some of the things that are happening now from happening. But the biggest problem we have right now is, allegedly, the Chinese are saying they're going to do certain things, but they won't publicly agree to it. In essence, we are getting reports that they've agreed to things, but getting a public commitment and a signed commitment from them has proven harder. This is the games they've been playing for a very long time. This administration's been good about standing up to it and not giving into it, and I don't expect they would give into it now unless this is a firm deal that we can enforce. That's the other part.
Yeah,
they'll sign anything, and then they won't comply. Ask Hong Kong.
Right. Talking about Latin America, Venezuela, let me just ask you, what's going on there? Because it seemed at one point like it was on track for regime change. That hasn't happened. And if anything, it seems that it's kind of taken a turn for the worse, because we're getting reports that the oil, the precious oil, right, PDVSA, is basically looking to the Russians for investment. Reports in Russian media that the Russians are preparing to buy all of PDVSA. Chinese are investing down there. Iran's investing down there, right here in our hemisphere. What's the plan?
Well, look, they're trying to. Their production capacity is badly debilitated, and has nothing to do with sanctions. It's exacerbated now by sanctions, but it began a long time ago because they stole the money instead of reinvesting it in a company like you normally would. What the Russians have basically been doing is taking the Venezuelan crude and reselling it for them in the global market and sharing the proceeds. And they've been helping them evade sanctions by ship-to-ship transfers to get oil into Cuba and in different places. But it is no longer the source of revenue for theft that it once was for the regime. Look, the regime is stuck. I agree that you would say the opposition is stuck and the democratic forces are stuck, but the regime is really stuck. They can't travel abroad. They can't access millions of their dollars. Their relatives can't travel like they used to. They have no way out of the situation they face. And American sanctions, as long as Donald Trump is president, aren't going anywhere until they have free and fair elections. So we got to have some strategic patience here and keep working on it. And other countries who are being impacted need to step up. Right,
but we run the risk that the Russians go in there and get it all, or the Chinese for that matter. I mean, how do we make sure that we've created a problem there? We haven't created it; they created it. We've been trying to deal with it. How do we make sure that countries that are not our friends don't establish a big presence right here in our hemisphere?
Well, they already have a presence there, but let me tell you what their presence is. A lot of people don't know this. They owe the Chinese and the Russians billions of dollars, and the way that Venezuela is paying that debt is not with cash, it's with oil. They are giving them 50 cents on the dollar and crude as payment, as barter payment for the debt they already owe them. So they're not even generating cash from a lot of this. They're just paying their debt to the Chinese and to the Russians that they already owe them. They are really trapped. You see the constraints. You see that now the Maduro regime has had to dollarize the economy, so people who have access access to dollars, like people that have relatives abroad, can go into stores and buy things at inflated prices. Everybody else is suffering and starving, especially the poor, who have been the base of the Chavista support in the past.